Hello, everyone. I want to thank you for joining us for our Winners Circle discussion today, where I am joined by Jason Lee, the Chief Information Security Officer of Zoom, and Carl Wright, Chief Commercial Officer for AttackIQ. Before we kick it off, I want to set the stage here. We are, of course, celebrating our SC Awards, winners of our SC Awards, and Zoom is the recipient of our SC Award for Best Pandemic Pivot. This is a new category where we sought to recognize a vendor or service provider that was able to accommodate the dramatic shifts in customer requirements, which came with COVID, enabling organizations to operate with security top of mind. And Zoom has been very vocal about having a very big surge in demand, recognizing some lessons in terms of that surge and what they needed to deliver, and turning around and making good on that with a lot of security capabilities that they built into their service to better enable organizations to continue to operate in a remote environment. AttackIQ is winner of our Best IT Security Related Training Program, which is a long-time category, very important one, of course. The reason I brought these gentlemen together is that, what I want to talk about is not the pandemic, how did it challenge organizations? Because we've all talked about that for a couple of years, but rather what is now being described as the future of work, the hybrid workforce. What does that now mean for what the vendor community, the technology community, what is being asked of them? There are new requirements. So I want to dig into what those requirements are and how it's shifted services that are provided to customers. So of course, Zoom is getting all sorts of questions and demands from customers, and then organizations are trying to figure out how to better train their employees within their organization to be considerate of security when they're not necessarily working in the traditional environment anymore. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Gentlemen, I first want to say welcome and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
And congratulations on the awards. As you both know, we have a panel of judges. We do not, as an editorial team, select them. So we have a really amazing panel of judges that dig into every entry. And so it's no small feat. So congratulations, certainly, to both of you. I want to start off by kind of quickly addressing kind of where are we now? Like there's this post-rapid surge of remote work, but what are companies focused on in terms of, is it establishing policies for a hybrid workforce? Are they still closing security gaps? Are they rolling out new technology? I would love to hear from both of you, from your own customers, how this is shifting demands. So Jason, maybe we'll start with you.
Sure. We've all talked about how remote work is such a huge thing, and things are really transitioning into this hybrid approach. We at Zoom really believe that it is here to stay long term. Most companies are focused on, the scope of the security measures to close any gaps. It was rushed in so quickly, and now we really have this new model, and it's really becoming an expectation. One of the things that I think, like the technical gaps, is we've talked a lot about, and it's come up a lot with CISOs, is this zero trust model. I like to call it an always verify and never trust. It just kind of simplifies it a little bit. And to me, it really comes down into is the control of your identity, because people are being mobile. And if they're going from the office to home to even digital nomads going to different countries and just traveling and really having that acceleration on that mobility, it really, to me, comes down into the identity side of things, and really thinking about access management, really around risk scoring, making sure that the person's really who they are on whatever device that they're coming into. And then the other side of it is the mobile device management, as we kind of pivot around into all these different systems and environments. The bring your own device. There's sometimes you have MDM, like the mobile device management, sometimes you don't. And I think it's really become a bar that you have to have that in place.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I don't know whether organizations themselves necessarily know the threats that emerge with this type of hybrid workforce. So I would imagine, Carl, that brings in the challenge of training, not only for employees in terms of what they should and shouldn't do, but also in companies themselves, organizations really knowing where the security gaps are and ensuring to address that in terms of training of their employees. So what are you hearing? Are folks recognizing where they need to focus attention?
Yeah, I think the problem is even bigger than most people realize. If you flash back just 4 or 5 years ago, the amount of concurrent employees that could remotely work at any one time, how much VPN access a corporation had or didn't have, and who got access to VPN. We went from modicum amounts of capability to now, in order to continue from a continuity of business operations perspective, entire companies having to go remote. And the example I like to give is the U.S. government contracting offices, which these government employees had desktops, and all of a sudden now they can't come to work. And how do they process orders for the federal government? And for 6-7 months, the federal government procurement process stopped, even though they needed to buy more emergent technology in order to facilitate remote work and laptops and all these things. And so this rush to consume technologies that would support business continuity of operations and remote work and all these type of things obviously led to lots of decisions being made quickly, and configuration management, configuration control, and a lot of problems taking a second tier to getting access. And now we're spending a number of years trying to recover from this rapid consumption and deployment of remote capabilities. And that recovery is not just teaching users how to better use it, but also teaching IT professionals how to secure it, what the threats are, and all the things that come with this new great capability. After the pandemic hit, really AttackIQ, we shut down all offices globally within 3 months. Offices in Barcelona and Argentina and North America. We've been 100% remote ever since then. But we had to, even though we're smaller than Zoom, hopefully someday we'll be as big. But we had to kind of deal with those trials and tribulations as well. But the other piece of this I want to just double click on is, with this remote capability and employees actually training themselves quite a bit, like they're going out and seeking knowledge. We've also kind of hit a transitory workforce, at least we did prior to now, where employees were coming and going at higher rates than we've seen before. And so with this remote access, transitory workforce, it really created other insider threat issues specific to access to data, who has access to data, what data are they taking when they leave, and other challenges like that I think we're still dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. As two companies that provide services to accommodate organizations that were kind of dealing with this new environment, did it incentivize you as companies to look at your own offerings and make enhancements, make adjustments, or is there more emphasis on certain offerings that you're delivering to your clients based on this new environment that they're working in? Jason, I know Zoom incorporated so many new security features, but looking forward, looking long term, did this kind of change the long-term model for Zoom in terms of where the focus needs to be, particularly from a security perspective?
Yeah, no, I mean, it has. I really enjoy spending a lot of time with our customers and learning about the challenges. We do have like a CISO advisory board that I love, and I get a lot of insights. And some of the things that are the critical features, especially when you think about Zoom, is they want to know how's the data routing, and do you have end-to-end encryption? Because I could have employees working in hiring them in different locations, and with all the kind of transitory nature, those are all top of mind. We've added those controls. The other thing that's changing is just the regulatory environment, and making sure that with all the data protection requirements and whatnot coming out, is staying on top of all of our certifications and getting new certifications. And so we've spent a lot of time on that so that we're able to operate well in all these different markets across the world. So those ones have been kind of the big ones for us, but really that control of the data is very pertinent to everybody.
Which I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but Zoom became much more of a corporate tool professional tool than it probably was before COVID. It's not like you necessarily would go in an office and they'd say, here's your Zoom account, but now they generally do. So I have to imagine that did open the door to considerations that might not have been top of mind before.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So Carl, for you, as customers come and say, okay, we need to make our organization understand the requirements for security in this new environment, how has it shaped the way AttackIQ goes, the go-to market strategy?
Yeah, that's a huge question and very pertinent. So, one of the things that we have to look at is the evolution of vendors and customers over the last 10 to 15 years and how customers consume information, whether it's in the buying cycle, after they buy, or as they continue to get supported. And the pandemic really ushered in kind of a new era of interaction that was required in order to kind of help customers along this customer journey. And that started in pre-sales motions, where you have an opportunity because you don't get to interface with customers at lunch or at dinner or at the bar, at happy hour or whatever. Everything's over Zoom, right? Everything is kind of a digital interaction. And what we found is that training, even in pre-sales motions, puts the company and the prospective customer in a much better position of knowledge transfer. And let's face it, knowledge is power. And finding really effective ways to transfer that knowledge to both employees and employers ultimately is a win for how people want to consume information today anyway.
Yeah.
And so what we did was we focused our training on training that would be useful from a thought leadership perspective in a pre-sales motion, and helping people get to understand the bigger concepts at either the CISO level or at the technical level, helping them adopt the technology with best practices. I can't tell you how many times I've decided to do a DIY project at my house and went on YouTube to see 10 other people, how they did it. And that's how I could, figured out how to go do it myself, right? And technology is the same way. So the better content, the better training you have during adoption and execution phases for the customer helps them achieve those business outcomes they're looking for in the first place. And so in doing so, we've changed I think, the relationship with our customers and our partners to be a lot more meaningful, a lot more long-term looking, and basically enhance the interaction and the knowledge that we provided to them.
Are they coming to you with an awareness that this needs to be done, or do you find that you and your team are having to kind of knock on their door and say, listen, you need to consider this more now than you might have before, and let us explain why? Like, what have you seen?
I think, we're a global company like Zoom. And so I think, part of this depends what market you're in.
Yeah.
From a capability maturity model perspective, different markets are moving faster than others. I mean, North America, you kind of segment that into enterprise, Fortune 1000, lower enterprise, mid-market, and you're going to have differences in those markets. But I would say for organizations that are at the highest risk of adversaries targeting them, they're getting much more serious about this. And as a tech company, though, this is where we also get to innovate and think about problems that maybe they don't have time to think about, and build really cutting edge advanced curriculum around those problems so that they can digest it when they need to.
Yeah, it's a great point. For both of you, I'm curious, when the pandemic first came out, there was a rapid, effort to accommodate a remote workforce, of course. So we did see that Zoom saw a surge in users. We saw a ton of organizations that transitioned to the cloud, in hopes of, enabling operations to continue. But what we heard also was, not enough attention to security as they did those things. It was like a rapid fire decision, and then it was going back and closing the gaps and trying to address security. So where we are now as organizations try to formalize what their environment is going to look like in this hybrid workforce, future of work, did they learn their lesson? Are they saying that tech will enable operations to move forward, so go for it? Or are they saying, how do we ensure security is top of mind as we come up with this model? That's for both of you. Jason, I'll start with you.
Yeah, no, I mean, security and privacy have to be kind of all facets of the operations. I mean, it's important that that it's part of that kind of decision making. I do think there was a lot of lessons learned, and like you said, things were thrown together quickly. And I talked about in the beginning of really having this notion of the stronger identity in the mobile workforce. I mean, to me, there was it was a Qualtrics research that said like 80% of people are saying that they're going to have some sort of virtual element post-pandemic. So it's like you think about the hybrid model. And one of my favorite things that I like to call out is like, so think about if you're going into a conference room and you're just about always going to have remote employees now. And so if you have one screen and you just see the big conference room, you can't tell who's talking. And so there's still technology there that needs to really help that be easier. And there's like Smart Gallery for Zoom, where it basically puts everybody in the conference room in a box and you can see who's talking. And so gets it back to, because I do think there was like a lot of that democratization of communication with Zoom and having the squares, knowing who's talking. And so I still think there's going to be more technology and push into that to make it easier to go back and forth. And then the other thing that's come up, there's a SEC guidance that's coming out around cybersecurity experience on your board and, requirements on reporting of cyber incidents. And one of the things that we did during the pandemic was we created a cybersecurity committee on the board. And I think you're going to see that a lot more too. Instead of it being the audit committee, you're going to see there's going to be cyber committees on the board. And that's another thing that's going to be changing and really reinforces that security is such a core part of the business that a whole board committee is dedicated to it.
Yeah, and you almost need to, you kind of bring up the point that there's some amazing tools and capabilities that are emerging, and you almost hope that as organizations say, yes, that's exactly what we need, let's go for it, that it's also the thought process of how does this integrate? How are we ensuring that the security is properly addressed? So, Carl, part of that is, of course, ensuring that proper IT training and security training is incorporated. Do you see people keeping that top of mind as they look to this rush of capabilities?
Yeah, I'm going to say no. I think security is still absolutely an afterthought. And the best example I can give, the pandemic ushered in massive transformation, no more so than cloud adoption. And if we just take a look at Azure, just as an example, there's 48 discrete security controls in Azure that can be deployed to protect all the things you care about in Azure. But the fact is, most CIOs and many CISOs have no idea there's 48 discrete security controls. And the architects don't either. The reason why is Azure has only been around for less than a decade, and people's understanding of all the capabilities of Azure and what it can do is still grossly underutilized, right? It's just people don't know. And when you don't know, that's when you make mistakes, and adversaries take advantage of mistakes. And last thing I want to say on this point, our cyber adversaries, they don't focus on technologies that are 20 years old. They focus on technologies that you just adopted that your people don't know or understand, because they know you're going to make misconfigurations because it's brand new. And that's, good example is how many S3 buckets continue to be left open. And the adversary doesn't have to do anything to steal all that data. These are all training issues and configuration management, configuration control issues that, if we continue to train our people, equip our people, and focus on configuration management, things like that, we'll be able to continue to safely and better deploy and operationalize emerging technologies.
Yeah, and I have to, in closing, we're out of time, but I have to imagine there's some responsibility on the technology companies to stop and say, okay, yes, we're gonna innovate, we're gonna offer you these capabilities that's gonna make operations easier in this environment, but keep in mind, this is how this needs to be integrated in a secure way. I mean, Zoom had to do that, Jason, right?
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree, and it's really this notion of secure by default, and just as what Carl was saying, it's like if you need to know, you need to turn on all these switches and dials in order to secure it, and you're going fast or you're innovating, you don't know all of the switches and dials. And so it's really like, all the companies should be responsible for trying to get it as secure by default, so you can't turn it on and forget some of the switches and knobs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point. Well, I want to thank you both so much. Fascinating topic, and one that I think we'll be talking about for years to come, as we kind of get the hang of this whole hybrid workforce. But first and foremost, congratulations on the wins. Really great technology and services to the community. So congratulations on that.
Great. Thank you so much. Congratulations, Jason.
Thank you. And you too, Carl. Congratulations.
Great. And listeners, please do make sure to take a look. Go to our website, scmagazine.com, for all of our coverage on the SC Awards, and to see the full list of winners and many other Winner's Circle roundtable discussions. Thanks for joining us.